Welcome once again to Heart of a Shepherd. We are in the book of First Samuel today. We're kind of going back and forth between First Samuel and the Psalms that were authored by David. And so right now we're still finding him in that time period, and I guess I would describe it as the wilderness, where he is fleeing from his enemies, particularly Saul and those soldiers that he is sent to not only capture but ultimately to kill David. And so as we come back to 1 Samuel chapter 27, we do find David once again on the run, and I've titled the devotional Faltering Faith. 1 Samuel chapter 27. I do invite you to open your Bible here, as I think you're going to find that our study today will be very practical. Well, Saul had spoken words of affirmation to David, saying, "Blessed be thou, my son David. Thou shalt both do great things, and also shalt still prevail." 1 Samuel 26 and verse 25. And yet, David understood the malicious and evil nature of King Saul, and he said, 1 Samuel 27 and verse 1, in his heart, David said, "In his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul." Now, we have recorded in 1 Samuel 27 David's departure and his care for his family, not only his family, but also the men and their families that are now with him. 1 Samuel 27 and verse 2 through 4. And so David, fearing for his life, decided to quickly escape into the land of the Philistines, because he believed the king would not stop until he was dead. Well, with his wives and 600 men, David retreated to the territory of Achish, the Philistine king of Gath. Now, when Saul learned that David had left Israel, we read in 1 Samuel 27 and verse 4 that he sought no more again for him. And yet, even though he's escaped and safe for the moment, 1 Samuel 27 verses 5 through 7 records David's despair. Now, David appealed to his old enemy, King Achish, who granted him, along with his men and their families, sanctuary in Gath. Now, Gath was the hometown of the defeated giant Goliath. Now, wanting, though, to distance himself from the king's royal city, David asked for a town where he and his men's families could live. And so King Achish then granted David Ziklag, a city in southern Judah. And now we come to David's deception, verses 7 through 12. So David did live among the Philistines for 16 months. And during that time, he gained possessions by raiding the lands and cities of Israel's enemies, Geshurites and the Gezrites and the Amalekites, in verse 8. Now, to keep his activities secret from the Philistines, David ensured there were no survivors from his raids. So when he would raid a town, what would he do? He would kill everyone in it and then take the spoils of those cities. Now again, these were enemies of David as well as enemies of Israel. Now, in doing this, David tricked the Philistine king into thinking he was attacking Israel. In verses 10 through 11, we read, "Achish believed David, saying, He hath made his people Israel utterly to abhor him. Therefore he shall be my servant forever." And so King Achish took comfort in thinking that David had put Israel at odds with him. Therefore he would never be able to go back to Israel. In fact, as you and I know from history, it will be just the opposite. Well, this brief devotional will conclude with some thoughts. There is no evidence that the Lord guided David's choice to leave Israel and settle in the Philistine territories. David appeared to have made that decision when he felt he had no other choice. Now, while he escaped from Saul, his immediate enemy, he placed himself, his men, and their families among the Philistines, another hostile group. Now, I cannot suggest a defense for David's decision to lie and deceive King Achish, the Philistine king, other than that David had fallen into a state where his fears had overwhelmed his faith. Solomon, David's son, will write later in Proverbs 29 and verse 25, "The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe." In life, trials and temptations present you and me with two choices. We can rely on our wits, be like David, and be driven by fear, or we can view trials through the eyes of faith, trust, and obedience to the Lord. Solomon advised his son in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he, the Lord, shall direct thy paths." So here's a question. Where do you turn when you're troubled? David rather, unfortunately turned from Israel and fled to the Philistines and found himself in the midst of another enemy. I found in life when you run from an enemy, you'll invariably face another enemy just like him. It's always better to take the stand of faith, be faithful and true to the Lord, and trust him. By doing that, you will overcome your fears. May you not be a slave of fear. May you be one who walks in fear of God and not the fear of man. God bless, and bye-bye.